Please, please, please. Dang it! It's only been 10 minutes. Hello. Okay, so I know that I want my YouTube channel to have some kind of variety. I don't want it to just be informational cubing videos. I've been watching a lot of YouTube videos lately of cartoonists that just talk about their lives. People like Bruce Stew, The Odd Ones Out, and Ice Cream Sandwich. Now I see these guys in their cartoons and I'm like, well, I've had an interesting life, I think. So maybe I can make cartoons on the internet too. So that's what I tried to do, but I ran into a problem. Animation software costs money and I don't have money. So even after hours of writing a script, drawing out my character, and a bunch of other things, I scrapped the idea of a cartoon, at least until I can afford it. Instead, a friend suggested to me that I should just solve puzzles while telling the story. So that's what this is. Me solving puzzles while telling a story. Okay, let's get started. One of the biggest problems that I've run into while trying to think about this concept was that I haven't exactly had a good life. My life's not all that funny and I don't want it to just seem like I'm complaining or pessimistic. With that said, I have to start somewhere, so I'm just going to tell a story from my life and try to throw a lesson in at the end of every video and just see what happens. Now, a few years ago, I started keeping journals so that I would have written records of what I've gone through. So each of these stories will be pulled from my journal entries, and one day when I'm brave enough, I might release the journals themselves. But for now, I'm just going to pull from the journals and try to make it entertaining. For my first story, I'll be talking about my second job ever, a nail factory. Now, why am I not starting with my first job? Well, because I worked both my first ever and second ever job at the same time. The nail factory story is easier to tell, and it's my show and you can't tell me what to do. Chapter 1. The Interview. At 18 years old, I went to the nail factory in a small town, and when I walked in, the secretary asked for me by name when I told her that I had an interview. I guess they didn't have a lot of applicants. Regardless, I took that as a good sign, and it made me excited. The boss there took me on a tour of the nail factory and showed me each of the machines. There were some where you put nails in boxes, some where you wrap them in a row, some where you weigh them, etc. It was all incredibly simple, and holy cow was it loud. At the end of the tour, he gave me an address to go to and told me that as soon as I go there and do the paperwork and drug test, I can start. He told me that if I go and do it early in the morning, I can come in that same day and start working. So he pretty much told me that I was already hired and I just had to fill out some paperwork. I needed the money, so that made me happy. Chapter 2. First Day and Weird Things. The next day I got up at 7 a.m. to go to this little staffing agency. I had to fill out so much paperwork that it felt like taking the PSAT tests all over again. And I had to take a drug test. No problems there. Then we move on to the computer section of the paperwork, and there were some questions that I needed to fill out in order to determine if I was smart enough to do these jobs. And the questions were third grade level addition, subtraction, and multiplication problems, like 24 times 4 is 96, 49 minus 19 is 30, 156 divided by 13 is 12, etc. It was embarrassingly easy. And there was also a safety video that I had to watch that talked about lockout tagout, which is basically a safety precaution to prevent anybody from getting hurt. Finally, I finished up the paperwork, went to the nail factory, clocked in, and started working at a station that I was assigned to. In my station, I had to put a 50-gallon steel barrel of nails onto a lift, and the lift lifts it up, and then I use this thick metal rake-like thing to pull the nails out of the barrel and into a giant metal tray. Then I had to take my bare hands and put them into this tray and grab the nails and put them into boxes. Then I weighed them to make sure that there was exactly 6.05 pounds worth of nails. Why that specific, I have no idea. Anyways, I'd close the boxes, put them on one of those wooden pallets, and stamp them. I did 180 boxes during the 5 hours I was there that day, which meant that I made a 57% contribution margin, which is, well, not great, but it was a partial day. Now, this company had some strange things about it, like the fact that there was no actual lunch break. We worked a straight 8-hour shift, and the breaks that we got were only 10 minutes. Now, I do not like to waste my time, so during my 10 minutes of freedom, I would use the restroom and then practice juggling. Yes, I juggle, that's a different story for a different day though. The soap in the bathroom was so weird. Since we had so much metal or oil from the nails all over us, we had heavy-duty soap and a literal tub of borax that we mixed with the soap to wash our hands. First I'm going to get my soap, then I'm going to get my borax. There was also this sign. They spelled toilet wrong. The first time I saw that, I was like, toilier? What the heck is that? Is that French? And there wasn't just one of these signs either. There was one next to each urinal, in each stall, and by the sink. There were so many things wrong with that. Like the fact that it happened enough times that there had to be a sign made. Weren't you ever taught that you don't put paper towels and baby wipes in the toilet? And even after the signs were made, they put them up knowing that there was an obvious typo. I concluded that they just didn't care at all. Now this factory was so loud that I had to wear earplugs, but there was one problem. I didn't have any earplugs. So I just had to deal with the headache until the end of the day. It's fine though, I went and got some the next day. Unfortunately, I still lived with my mother at the time, and I didn't have a car, permit, or even a license. My mother would not allow me to have those things, so I had to try to figure out a ride for myself. To get home, I called my sister's boyfriend at the time, Alex, and he said that he would give me a ride for $400. Like, what? No way. Jeez, I could get an Uber for $80. So I ended up walking about 5 of the 10 miles to my house before someone I knew saw me walking and gave me a ride. That was my first day. Chapter 3. Transportation. My mother would not take me to work unless I paid her $20 per trip. So it would be $20 going there and $20 going back. That was $40 a day, or 1/3 of my day's wages. And I was not willing to pay that, so I either had to walk or find a ride. I walked for a while, but I got tired of doing that quickly, and the factory was close to 10 miles away from my house. So walking was a total pain every day that I had to do it. However, since my stepdad, Mike, was recovering from surgery, I asked him if I could use his truck. So despite not having a permit or a license, I drove illegally, yet carefully, in his truck to get to work for the rest of the time that I worked there. Chapter 4. The new machine. Day 2. When I walked in, I expected to work on the same station as the day before, boxing nails. But Johnny, the guy who hired me, put me on a new station. In this station, I push a button, and that is all I do. There was a line of nails, I push and hold the button, and the nails came down into a bag. The bag gets sealed shut with a hot piece of metal that melts the plastic to seal the bag. Then the next bag comes out, and a little pipe blowing air holds the bag open for the next batch of nails. The job is easier than boxing the nails. After all, it was just pushing a button. But man, was it boring. When I asked Johnny about the contribution margin, he said, and I quote, "Don't worry about it, you'll never hit it anyway." I thought it was so weird that he said it like that. I had a chair so I could sit or stand, but apart from that, the only time I got to move was when the nails got stuck in the line at the top of the machine. I have to use some construction stairs to get up there, and then I'd pull out the excess nails and push down the feathered, sticking out nails until they were all single file again. There are other times that I had to get up as well, like when the machine ran out of nails, I would have to use another metal rake tool to scoop more into the machine. Or when the bags run out, I had to replace the bags and feed them into the back of the machine. Every once in a while, a nail will get caught in the bag sealer and the machine will stop. When that happens, I just push this button sequence, reset, F1, start the machine back up, and by then the nails or nail have fallen into the bag. And if it hasn't, then I just give the bag a little jiggle until it does. Sometimes the bags will stick together, so as they came down the conveyor belt, I would have to tear them apart. Rather than asking Johnny to come and help me every time that something went wrong, I watched him do it once and memorized it, so I knew how to calibrate and fix all of the issues on the machine had by myself. For example, when the machine starts flashing hold, then I know that it needs to be recalibrated. So I turn it off and then I press the following sequence. Seal time 40, enter reset. Seal temperature 360, enter reset. Seal point 80, enter reset, F1. And then the machine starts working again. What that did was set the time it takes to seal the bag to 0.4 seconds, the temperature at which the bag seals to 360 degrees Fahrenheit, and the point on the bag that it seals to 0.8 inches away from the top. This is the most complicated that the machine gets, and it wasn't really all that complicated. I just had to push a few buttons and occasionally fix the machine. Sometime during the shift, the automatic bag sealer stopped working, so I had to push F1 every time to manually seal the bag. It was not hard, just one extra button, but eventually Johnny noticed this and he asked, "Why didn't you say anything?" While chuckling, I told him that it was because it didn't bother me. I just had to push one extra button. He brought over his mechanic, who was not very smart for a mechanic, to try and fix it. This guy tried to put electrical tape over the cord so that it would go into the socket, and of course it didn't work. Then he brought over a new switch and tried to wire it in, but before he wired it incorrectly and caused a fire, I had to tell him to wire the hot wire to the hot end and the neutral to the other end. That way the electricity goes in one side and out the other, completing the circuit. When he took my suggestion, it finally worked. Chapter 5. Emotions. The days continued like this for a while. I got to work, push a button all day long, and try not to fall asleep from boredom. There were some days, though, that were a little harder for me than others. There are days when I would get in my emotions, and this day was one of those days. I started thinking about how I cannot always win, and nothing I ever do will be enough for the people that I love. I could work 1 job, 2 jobs, or 5 jobs, but that would never make me enough money to give my future wife, my mother, sister, father, Mike what they deserve. It won't be enough to give my children what they deserve. I was juggling 6 balls and constantly failing over and over again, and I started thinking about how I will have to fail over and over again in life as well. I don't think 75 years, if I'm that lucky, is a very long time. I think it's actually an extremely short amount of time. And that thought that I have such a short amount of time left to live, that worries me. It makes me work extremely hard, harder than I can handle sometimes, because I want to build a foundation for my future family. My own wants do not matter, and, for example, I want to sleep in every day, watch TV, cuddle with my future wife, eat food, play music, and go to bed. I wish I could do that every day, but I can't, because the harsh reality is that I am a poor man who's not good enough to be a father and a husband. Yet. I have to work to become the man I want to be. I have to work 17 hours a day at 2 jobs and 103 hours per week so that I can invest and build this foundation for my family. I refuse to let myself slack even a little bit because I want to give my family the world. So I'll juggle even though I don't want to. I'll work out even though I don't want to. I'll work these jobs even though I don't want to, and I will be the strong man that my family deserves. I remember telling myself that I was willing to work there, miserable, for the rest of my life if it meant that my future family would be happy. Chapter 6. Burnout. What is there to say, really? I got up and went to work every day at a job I hate. Then I went to work at night at a job that I liked. Transitioning between jobs was hard on me, and my mother kept saying that I do not help or spend enough time with anyone, and that I was the one who was hard on her, despite my working 17 hours per day, sometimes more. I was tired, hungry, and sore all the time. I'd been working 2 jobs, and it was not easy at all. Every morning at the nail factory was unbelievably boring, and that giant red clock in the room was so antagonistic. Like I would sit there and work for 3 hours, then I would accidentally see that stupid clock and it'd only been 10 minutes. Like, why? After a while, I got my first check in the mail from the nail company, and it was a staggering $266.23. Crap. It's okay though, it was a partial week. The job paid $15 an hour, which was the highest paying job that I'd ever seen at the time. My paychecks were usually just over $600 per week, and it was certainly more than my other job made, and more than my mother or stepdad made, and it was one step closer to my goal of being able to afford a family of my own. Chapter 7. Promotions. Do you remember when I said that I learned how to fix and recalibrate the machines? Well, the big boss saw that, and he saw that I was starting to fix the machine that I was on my own. So he promoted me and put me in a different, more challenging station. This new station was called the Twins. Why? Because these 2 machines were heathens, that's why. I had to fix these machines and they would constantly mess up. These machines were automatic bagging machines. That whole thing where I had to sit there and push a button, that's gone. Also, what? They've had a machine that automatically bags the nails this whole time? Then what the heck have I been doing for the past couple weeks? Not cool. Anyways, since I knew how to fix the machines now, the big boss wanted me to pretty much constantly fix these machines. And these things were brutal, and they broke down all the time. I just had to fix each repair every time to keep them running. After a long time working at this station, I got promoted to a full-time mechanic, and I would go around the factory and fix the machines as needed. Most of the things were simple fixes, but there was one thing that was always so hard to fix: the conveyor belts. Why were they so hard to fix? Well, it's because they would stop working when a nail fell inside and jam the chain that rotated the belt. And the only way to fix that was to take the entire thing apart, remove the nail, and then put it back together again. It was always such a pain. Bagging machine broken? Fine. Forklift issues? No problem. Nail threader? Piece of cake. Conveyor belt? Just rip my head off. Chapter 8. Making friends leads to an all-time high. Over the weekend, I had gone on a trip to my grandmother's to visit her, and when I awoke on her couch, it was 5 a.m., and I had to be at work at 7. So I had to get in Mike's truck and haul it as fast as I could to get to work on time. I was driving well over the speed limit because I needed to travel 60 miles, and I had a very short time to get there. I got there barely on time. I got to the factory, jumped out of the truck, went and clocked in at exactly 7 o'clock on the dot before going back outside to get my things and get ready for the workday. At work, I ran all of the machines by myself because there were a lot of people missing that day. So I had to run the automatic bagging machine, the manual bagging machine, the weighing station, and the cutting station all by myself. Everything was going great until the last hour of the day when the manual machine would not seal right, Twin 1 would not seal right, and Twin 2 was bagging them underweight. It was still fun to do all of that by myself for a day, despite the low contribution margin, but having to balance 4 machines and not being able to have enough time to fix all of them was complicated. There was a day that was going by fast until the final quarter when Tom, the plant manager that breaks the machines in his worthless attempts to fix problems that are not actually there, showed up. I watched Tom mess up the stations for 2 straight hours before he finally left. That day was bad, and our contribution margin, which had never been higher than 50%, was especially low because we lost those 2 hours. My whole group got into trouble for that lost time, and that's how I met some of my friends at the nail factory. There was a girl that I don't remember her name, a guy named Justin, and another guy named Jesse. Justin was newer than I was, but I noticed that he had a Bible verse tattoo on his arm, and he didn't really talk to anybody during the 10-minute break. So I talked to him about his tattoos and we bonded over our faith. We became good friends and we would play catch with a bag of nails when Johnny was not around. And go figure, every once in a while we would accidentally get stabbed in the hand by a nail that poked through the thin plastic bag. He and I had a lot of fun together because anything was better than doing that boring job. Jesse was the newest one and he took a good liking to me because I knew how to fix the machines and how to run them when someone was not there. He came to me when he had any questions and just to talk in general. So one day, my friends and I decided that we were going to make a plan to try and reach the 100% production rate, which had not ever been done before. So I put everyone where they were best at. I put the girl on the manual bagging station, the one where you push a button, because she can be in one location for a long time without falling asleep or getting bored. I put Jesse on the twins because I'd taught him how to run them and he was doing great at it. I put Justin on making boxes and putting them on the pallet because that involved running around the factory. And I put myself on a few things. Now I was a mechanic, so I was on breakdown duty the whole time. But today I was going to prioritize speed. I took all of the bags from the twins in the manual machine, weighed them out and boxed them. The ones that were not properly weighted, I cut them open and threw them into a barrel. When the boxes were full, I would tape them up, stamp them, and stack them on a wooden pallet. I had to run back and forth between the twins, the manual machine, the weigh station, and cutting open the other bags. When I tell you that the 4 of us grinded through that day, we did. We did 60 boxes full of nails that day. That ended up with an 81% contribution margin. That is the highest contribution margin that anyone had ever seen, and it made all of us, and even Johnny, extremely happy. Chapter 9. Injuries. Now it's safe to say that this nail company had 0 safety measures, and over time I had to buy the safety gear for myself. First, there was the noise. If you didn't have earplugs, you were going to get hearing damage, I guarantee it. My solution to this was earbuds and protective earmuffs. I got some earbuds that fit perfectly in my ears, and I put the protective earmuffs over those. That way I could listen to an audiobook, some music, and even just some YouTube stories. I would make a playlist before I went to work, and I would listen to that whole thing throughout the day. I remember reading a book called The Lord of the Flies back when I was in high school. So I ended up listening to that whole book again, and it was just as good as I remembered it. The song that got me through most of the work days was a song called Happy by NF. The song just reminded me that I should talk to God about my issues and that hard times that I've been through. It also made me realize that if I was truly happy my whole life, I would be a completely different person. I wouldn't be me. Alright, back to injuries. Second, nails in my hands. Now I should have expected this. It is a nail factory and I was going to get poked. And I knew that. I was aware of that. But I don't think I really understood the scale of how often I was going to get cuts on my hands. It happened all the time. The funnel that sorted the nails into their single file strips, I would have to stick my bare hands in that, or stick my hands into the trays to move the nails when I didn't have the rake, and even having to just grab a handful of nails sometimes because there were too many in the funnel and it was getting jammed. My solution to this was simple. I just got some gloves to protect my hands. Third, nail fragments and faulty equipment. Nail fragments were everywhere, and I mean everywhere. Everything was littered with this thick, itchy gray dust. It was worse than that pink, fluffy insulation. That dust got everywhere. And one day, one of the twins spewed out about a gallon of it, and it got on the inside of my elbow. Because the factory was almost 100 degrees all the time, I was sweating, and sweat makes those little itchy metal fragments stick to your skin. Not even the borax heavy-duty soap would get it off. The fragments would float too, so most of the time I ended up breathing in that cloud of metal. It also got spewed in my face and got in my eyes one time. Yep, metal fragments. In my eyes. Speaking of eyes, the faulty equipment. How the funnels worked was that they would shake to make the nails move, and this tiny tube shooting pressurized air out would make them spin in a certain direction. One day, that metal tube that shoots the air out broke and it shot, guess where? That's right into my eye. The solution to all of these was simple. I had to get a mask to cover my face so that I wouldn't breathe in that dust anymore, and I got safety glasses to protect my eyes. The fact that those two things were not required was astonishing to me. Now let's talk about the two worst injuries that ever happened to me at the nail factory. Okay, that lockout tagout thing that I was watching in the safety video, well, this factory did not have that at all. If you were working on fixing something, there was no way to keep people from turning the machine on, and that's exactly what happened to me. When I was fixing the conveyor belt, I had my hand inside of the chain with some pliers and a screwdriver to remove the jammed nail, and there was this girl who thought she knew everything, and she annoyed me all the time, which is funny because she ended up becoming my friend later on. Anyways, I was working on fixing the conveyor belt. She came over and turned it on, while my arm was still inside of it. I yelled in pain because my entire arm had just gotten pulled into the chain, and the chain was tearing into my arm, while the rubber belt was grinding around my arm like sandpaper. That's still not the worst injury that I ever had, though. The nails in the factory, for the most part, were stored in metal 50-gallon barrels, and when we ran out of nails in the bagging machines, there was a guy who would bring one of those huge barrels, and using a forklift, he would lift those barrels up and flip them over into the metal chute that went down into the funnel. Now this happened while I was still working with the twins. Twin A had run out of nails, so this guy brought the barrel over just like normal, but this time when he lifted it up, the barrel was lopsided. So when he used the forklift to turn the barrel over and dump the nails out, they didn't go into the tray. Instead, this 50-gallon barrel of nails poured down, right on top of me. As soon as I saw those nails falling, I ducked down, closed my eyes, and put my arms over my head and just waited as this horrid pain started. Each of those nails cut into my hands and my arms, and I was literally getting nails rained down on top of me. 50 gallons worth. When it was all over, I struggled to get up, but somehow, by the grace of God, I managed to, and I used my shirt to wipe off all of the blood. And there was so much blood too. Like, my arms were completely ripped to shreds. Chapter 10. Goodbye, Nail Factory. Now, why do I not work at this job anymore? Well, one day I woke up to go to work, and when I got there, Johnny sent me home and said to call the staffing agency. I asked Charles, one of the other bosses there, on my way out, why they were sending me home, and he said that they were looking for someone a little more focused, as if they did not reach their record high production margin with me there. Anyway, I called the staffing agency and asked what happened, and they told me that my temp period had ended, which was strange to me because I was not aware that this was a temp job. I thought that it was full time. They told me that this happened to everyone that they had ever sent to that nail factory. Apparently, at the end of the temp period, they were required to either let you go or pay you $2 extra an hour, which would have brought my pay from $15 per hour to $17 per hour. That's why they didn't keep me, and that's why they didn't keep anyone. They didn't want to pay more. It didn't have anything to do with me. It had to do with how long I was there. That did not bother me at all. I hated working there. I made $600 per week, and that was good money, but the awful working environment and that red clock are something that I never want to see again. I was happy and thanking Jesus that I did not have any choice but to not work there anymore. God knows me better than anyone, and He knows that I would have worked there for the rest of my life just because it paid well. So that was my experience working at a nail factory. My advice to you guys: don't ever work at a nail factory. And in the factory setting, take safety seriously. Most of my injuries at this place were just due to their complete lack of safety. Also, work as a team. When I had my whole team working together, we broke a record for that company. And we had fun. It made it so much more bearable. So having a team in any setting that you are in can lead to a big improvement. This was my first time ever doing a story-based video, so if you guys liked it, then let me know. Leave a comment down below, tell me what you thought, and give me suggestions for what you guys would like to see next. And thank you guys for watching. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button on your way out, and have a good day. I'll see you guys in the next video.